Hello and welcome to episode 65 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. We have three important things to hit on the show today. Since I'm not going to be talking a lot about Walt Disney World, I do want to give you something because I know a lot of you come for that theme park content. I'll wrap things up with my wife Courtney joining me for a dining review of Spice Road Table in Epcot's World Showcase. Before that, I'm going to talk about my recent vacation back to Pennsylvania. I visited Hershey Park and some other interesting locations. One of them has to do with Walt Disney World in a very, very small way. I want to start, however, with an update on my upcoming pilgrimage on the Ireland Way to raise money and awareness for domestic violence causes. In the last week, I have been given an opportunity which I could not refuse to help victims of domestic violence in another capacity. Hopefully by next week's episode, I'll have a lot more information on how you can help me in this endeavor. I really loved my time with Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, and it was only through my volunteer work there I'm in the position that I'm in at this moment. I even am happy to announce that last year I was awarded the President's Bronze Volunteer Service Award for my work with Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, so I want to thank them for that opportunity as well. As I move forward with my preparations for the Ireland Way, I can't wait to tell all of you about this exciting program that I'm going to be helping. Now, I want to get to my recent visit to Pennsylvania. As many of you know, I was born and raised in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Since I was already going to be in Philadelphia for a concert, I decided to turn it into an entire week-long vacation to the Keystone State. Of course, I couldn't be up there without making a visit to Hershey Park. I actually went on Easter Sunday, and it was certainly a culture shock. As I walked in the front gate, I am being 100% honest here, it started snowing. It wasn't laying on the ground or anything, but it was definitely snowing. It was extremely cold the entire day, so that was a bit of a bummer. To get the negatives out of the way first, not a lot of the attractions were open that day. While I was aware that the water rides wouldn't be operating, and that is why the tickets were at a discounted price, I was surprised that the Monorail, Kissing Tower, and Trailblazer were three of the rides that weren't in operation. I was really looking forward to riding their monorail, which is a fun journey that even takes you out of the park for a stretch. And I wanted to make the joke that during the pandemic, the Kissing Tower is going to be known as the Elbow Bump Tower. For anyone who doesn't know Hershey Park, the Kissing Tower is a ride that elevates you high into the sky to look over the central Pennsylvania landscape through Hershey kiss-shaped windows. The tradition is that if you go with somebody else, when you get to the top, you give them a little kiss while you're staring out over this beautiful farmland. The Trailblazer is a nice starter roller coaster that's sort of a step between the Barnstormer and Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Magic Kingdom. I am a sucker for the Old West theming, and I'm not really into those extremely thrilling coasters, so I was looking forward to the Trailblazer. Unfortunately, like I said, it wasn't operating. And honestly, even if I was more of a coaster fan, it was just too cold for me to be whipping through the sky with all the frigid wind in my face. So like I said, the weather that day was a bit of a bummer, but I guess I did get a discount on my ticket because of that. This visit to Hershey Park was my first as a vegetarian. That made a huge difference for me because it is just not a very vegetarian-friendly park. Obviously, they aren't going to be vegan-friendly with all of the chocolate, but I thought some of the food locations would at least have veggie burgers or something. Eventually, I found a vegetarian 3-bean chili in Hershey's Chocolate World, which is a separate attraction outside of the park. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Just be aware that it is a very meat-heavy park. Even the loaded French fry stand didn't have a vegetarian loaded French fry option. I think the biggest highlight of my visit might actually have been heading over to Zoo America, which is attached to Hershey Park and is included with your ticket price. You can also purchase a separate Zoo America ticket if you just want to check out the animals. This is a very, very small zoo, so don't be expecting something like you would get in San Diego, Columbus, or Phoenix. That being said, you do get to see a bunch of gorgeous animals. My favorites were the gray wolves and the ocelot. It is seriously worth it to take advantage of Zoo America during your Hershey Park day. You can probably do the entire thing reasonably in less than an hour, but it is a nice change of pace while you're running through an amusement park all day, going from ride to ride to ride. Just taking a step back and looking at some of the animals is a nice way to spend a little bit of time. The main ride I wanted to experience was Reese's Cup Fusion back over on the Hershey Park side, which is a Toy Story Mania style shooting ride. This was by far the longest I have waited for a ride in quite some time. The wait was posted at about 2 hours, and it took me about an hour 45 minutes to get off of the ride. Honestly, this was a great reminder for somebody like me who gets spoiled about skipping rides with longer lines at Walt Disney World. When I'm talking about traveling, I have to remember that a lot of you are on vacation. And sometimes when you're on vacation, you have to suck it up to accomplish everything you want to do on that vacation. Yep, I waited almost 2 hours in line, but the ride was definitely worth it. The premise is charmingly bonkers, I would say. I won't go into too many spoilers about the ride, but your objective is to save the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup factory. Cup Fusion is the ride at Hershey Park that most reminds me of a Disney ride. It has a lot of those dark ride elements, and it does resemble Toy Story Mania, which is extremely popular. It's a family-friendly ride, so that's also an advantage. Hershey Park kind of toes the line between an amusement park and a theme park, but this was decent theming. The only thing I ate in the park was a Reese's Giant Donut, so I was expecting this to be one of those crazy things that was going to be too sweet, but it was really solid. The donut itself was flaky and tasted like a quality cake. Obviously, the chocolate and Reese's Pieces on top of the donut were very sweet, but if you got a bite with a little bit of everything, it was perfect, and obviously one of those photogenic, Instagrammable items to get when you are at Hershey Park. At the beginning of the day, I did purchase their refillable soda cup that came to about $20 after tax. Unfortunately, at least from my perspective, Hershey Park is Pepsi products, but I figured I'd give it a try and see if I could get my money's worth over the course of the day. Essentially, any place but Chick-fil-A, and of course Chick-fil-A was closed because it was a Sunday and Easter Sunday at that, you can fill up your cup at a Pepsi station. You have to wait 10 minutes between fills, and you have 30 seconds to fill up your cup. For the most part, there were standalone Pepsi stations spread pretty thoroughly throughout the park. I was a little worried that I wouldn't be able to stop in between attractions without going out of my way. That was not the case. I didn't think to track how many refills I got overall like I did at Universal Orlando Resort with their refillable soda mug. Still, I'd say I got about $2 per refill, which isn't that bad, especially remembering that you do get to keep the mug. On a hot summer day, I definitely recommend this deal. I was probably drinking too many cold drinks on a cold day, but I like to get my money's worth on things like that. After I left the park for the day, I still wanted to visit Hershey's Chocolate World. You can visit this for free, and I believe there's even a way to park for free if you're only going to be there for a few hours. Obviously, they don't want people parking for free at Chocolate World and heading to the theme park or the amusement park, but they try to make it so that you can experience Hershey's Chocolate World without having to pay money. They have a lot of Hershey candy and merchandise on sale, but there are also some fun experiences. You can stuff your own Reese's, get a personalized Hershey's milk chocolate bar, or check out a movie. The biggest highlight of Hershey's Chocolate World is the free dark ride in the building. This is framed as a tour of the Hershey factory and has been updated a ton since I was a kid. I actually miss the iconic song that used to be at the end of this ride, but I know that things have to change. Some of your hosts are the candies themselves, and it does a really good job of edutainment, which is one of those words that Disney fans love. I got off the ride, grabbed the free piece of candy that they give you after the free ride. That's pretty impressive in and of itself. And headed to the food court where I finally found that vegetarian 3-bean chili. It came in a bread bowl and had cheese sprinkled on top. This was surprisingly good. As is often the case with vegetarian options, they made it a little spicy to hide the lack of meat. What impressed me most was the bread bowl. This was maybe 10 minutes before closing, and the bread was still soft. It didn't go stale sitting under a heat lamp all day. I ate the entire bread bowl after the chili, which I don't always do in those situations. If Hershey Park could have more of these quality vegetarian options inside the park, that would be a big deal. I hope they do that sometime in the near future. Overall, I'd have to say that I am happy that I made a return visit to see Hershey Park for the first time in roughly 15 years. It's not a must-do for me every time I'm back in Pennsylvania to visit friends or family, but it was a great way to spend Easter Sunday. All of my friends up there had plans with family, and my family was actually up in Boston because my aunt and cousin were running the Boston Marathon the following day. I just want to say, on a side note, congratulations, Dana and Christopher, on your amazing times in the Boston Marathon. A few days later, I traveled up from central Pennsylvania to the town of Jim Thorpe in the northeastern corner of the state. On my drive, I stopped by Deer Lake, which is where Muhammad Ali trained for a time during the height of his controversies. The facility was not open to guests at the time, but I was able to stand outside and take a few pictures. It only added about 15 minutes to the trip, so I think it was worth it. He painted some names of famous boxers on the rocks around the campsite, presumably for motivation, and that was fun to see. I've always been a big fan of Muhammad Ali, so seeing this facility was a big deal for me. I actually had known it was there since I was a very, very little kid, and I just never went to do it. It was one of those things where I was like, you know what, I'll do it next time, I'll do it next time, I'll do it next time. And when I saw Deer Lake was just 2 miles away on my drive up to Jim Thorpe, I thought, this is the time that I have to do it. My main purpose for going to Jim Thorpe, however, was to see the Harry Packer Mansion. The facade of the Harry Packer Mansion was used by Disney Imagineers as inspiration for the facade of the Haunted Mansion in Walt Disney World. Of course, Disneyland's version was set in New Orleans, so when they decided to put the ride in Liberty Square at Walt Disney World, they needed a new design for the outside portion. It was really cool to see this, and I will have a video of the Harry Packer Mansion, which you'll be able to see on the Tall Guy Talks Travel YouTube channel in just a couple of days. Initially, it could seem like a trip all the way up to the coal regions of Pennsylvania would be a waste to just see this one small piece of Disney history, but Jim Thorpe is a pretty incredible place to visit. I do have to address the controversy with the name Jim Thorpe itself, being named after the famous Native American athlete who I will claim, at least, was the greatest athlete in history. Jim Thorpe's body is actually buried there. His family has been going to court to try to regain control of the remains, but they've come up short in every attempt. In a previous job, I actually had the opportunity to interview Jim Thorpe's son, and this was definitely a sore subject for him. There's no doubt that Thorpe's body belongs wherever his family wants him to rest. So I just wanted to get that out of the way in case anybody thought my talk about how much I love this actual location had anything to do with what they did to one of my favorite athletes of all time, to be honest. Still, Jim Thorpe is a great place that could stand on its own without trying to take advantage of a sports hero's legacy. As I was driving up the mountain to see the Harry Packer Mansion, I passed an Irish pub named Molly Maguire's. Any history buffs listening may recognize the name Molly Maguire's. They were a group of Irish immigrants and Irish Americans in the coal regions of Pennsylvania. These were poor Irish who worked in the coal mines in Schuylkill, Carbon, and Lehigh counties, among others. 20 members of the Molly Maguires were executed for first-degree murder, and the state of Pennsylvania has since apologized for the executions as they were unjustified. Listen, this isn't a history podcast, so if you want to, Google the Molly Maguires. It is definitely an interesting story. Some of those executions took place just a few hundred yards up the mountain from the bar Molly Maguires. I did take a picture of the prison where the men were put to death, but it was extremely hard to find a place to park, so that was all I got of that image. That is definitely a downside of this location. Parking is very hard. Having Irish heritage, including ancestors who worked in the coal mines of northeastern Pennsylvania, this has always been an interesting story for me. There's a Sean Connery movie about the Molly Maguires as well, but I can't vouch for it because I haven't seen it yet. As for the pub itself, I was thoroughly impressed. The atmosphere was awesome with a typical Irish pub look in the front room with some fancier dining rooms further back in the building. I ordered an appetizer of pierogies because you will never have better pierogies than in the coal regions of Pennsylvania. They were cooked in butter with sauteed onions on top. The edges of the pasta were cooked to be just a little crisp, but the potatoes on the inside were still incredibly creamy. I also got a veggie wrap, and I was pleasantly surprised by that as well. The balsamic vinaigrette mixed with the veggies and cheese to provide the perfect flavor. It was nice to follow up something so loaded with carbs and butter with a lighter main course as well. The service was excellent, and all of the servers also knew a lot about the history of the town. Molly Maguires is literally within walking distance of the Harry Packer Mansion, so if you're going to try to see the inspiration for the Haunted Mansion in Walt Disney World, this is the place I think you should stop for some food, or maybe a pint. The main draw of Jim Thorpe would have to be the train that gives multiple rides throughout the mountains each and every day. While I did not have the time to ride the train, it is right across the street from Molly Maguires, and I've heard that it is a beautiful experience. Even just turning down the main street to explore deeper into Jim Thorpe is like a trip back in time. The shops that line the street are beautiful and classic. It amazes me that they were able to maintain this gorgeous architecture and stunning ambiance with other areas of the coal regions really falling into disrepair. It's no surprise to me that Disney Imagineers visited Jim Thorpe to come up with ideas, because honestly, I could see them basing Main Street USA on Jim Thorpe if Walt Disney wanted the Northeast instead of the Midwest represented. It had that type of Americana. As I mentioned before, Lancaster was where I was born and raised, so I really wanted to make sure to revisit the home of U.S. Congressman Thaddeus Stevens. In the lead up to and during the Civil War, Stevens represented Lancaster County in the U.S. House of Representatives as one of the, quote, radical Republicans. He was an ardent abolitionist who not only believed that slavery was wrong and should be eliminated, but truly stated publicly that he believed that black and white people were equals. His confidant, Lydia Hamilton Smith, was the first black woman to own property in Pennsylvania and is actually buried in the same cemetery as my grandparents. Stevens' home is on South Queen Street in Lancaster, and historians have found secret rooms in the basement which were believed to have been used to help escaped slaves to their freedom. I feel he is an underappreciated historical figure, and I do love Tommy Lee Jones' performance as Thaddeus Stevens in the movie Lincoln. To say that the life and legacy of Thaddeus Stevens is a point of pride for most people from Lancaster County would be a huge understatement. The city also boasts the home of former President James Buchanan, but obviously having a president who many historians view as one of the worst in the history of the United States isn't quite the point of pride as having somebody like Thaddeus Stevens. Before I move on from Lancaster, I thought all of the Disney fans listening would be interested to know that Jonathan Groff, who voiced both Kristoff in Frozen and Frozen 2, and who plays the king in the production of Hamilton on Disney+, is from Lancaster County. He performed in a number of productions at Fulton Theater in downtown Lancaster, within walking distance of Thaddeus Stevens' house. As a Disney fan, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm a sucker for good theming, and I also love almost all adaptations of Robin Hood. Of course, the Russell Crowe version does not count. In Lancaster, there's a restaurant with great theming and an incredible purpose. Loxley's The Legend Continues. Obviously, it's themed towards the classical story of Robin of Locksley, and they move that thematic integrity to the concept of robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. A portion of your check from each and every meal is donated to charity. They have a chalkboard by the host stand to keep track of how much is being raised for charity that particular month. The theme's not just limited to that, however, because the outside bar area and restaurant seating is designed to be like a treehouse in Sherwood Forest. The inside seating areas are cavernous, like the inside of a castle in the Middle Ages. This was one of the places in Pennsylvania that had a decent number of vegetarian options, as you can replace the meat patty in any burger with a veggie patty. Since that was the case, I got the goat cheese burger and an appetizer of fried cheese curds. The fried cheese curds were very good. I actually had the chance to review a similar item at a baseball game in Florida recently, and there isn't a whole lot more to say about them. They're really good, and it's hard to mess up fried cheese curds without some serious mistakes. The burger was also perfection. To make a veggie patty juicy, it has to be cooked to just the right level. If you leave it on for even a little too long, it will get dry very, very quickly. This was not. The flavorful toppings and patty were brought out even more by the mild flavor of the goat cheese. Then, when I didn't think the meal could get any better, my server told me about their cheesecake dessert. The cheesecake changes every day, and that particular day it was a fruity Pebbles cheesecake. There was no way I was going to refuse that. The crunch of the fruity Pebbles mixed with the creaminess of the cheesecake to provide the perfect texture, and you could tell this cheesecake was made with fresh ingredients. Lancaster County is, before anything else, a farming community, and you can expect everything to taste fresh. While I'm happy to have moved to warmer weather because I hate driving in the snow, I will never miss an opportunity to speak of the things I love from my old stomping grounds. You'll be able to see some fun videos from these places and other stops on my visit to Pennsylvania on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel in the coming days and weeks. It was interesting to try to film in restaurants because it's a lot less common in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania than it is at Walt Disney World. I would also like to state for the record that these were just some of the things I had the opportunity to visit and were important for me to visit while I was in the area, especially if you're visiting Hersheypark or maybe Lancaster County to see the Amish. Don't just limit yourself to those things. Lancaster in particular has a great art community. There are so many wonderful galleries with different types of artists, from fine artists to some more experimental artists. I even had some of my work displayed in art galleries in Lancaster back when I lived there. It's definitely the type of community that supports the arts, and you will be surprised how much fun you can have in downtown Lancaster on a First Friday. However, getting back to Walt Disney World, let's welcome my wife Courtney to do a dining review from Epcot's World Showcase. Thanks for joining us, Court.
Absolutely, ready to talk some food.
We recently made a visit to Spice Road Table at the Morocco Pavilion in Epcot's World Showcase. We tried a few of their Mediterranean small plates. Courtney, you started things off with the non-spreads for $10, hummus, chermola, I believe is how it's pronounced, marinated olives, and za'atar. What did you think about this?
I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't always know all of the spices that are in some of these because they are more traditionally Moroccan, and I'm not always used to eating that food. But overall, I definitely enjoy Mediterranean food and Greek-style food, and this, falls into that same category. Everything was fresh and well made. The naan bread was warm, everything was flavorful. Definitely something I would get again and would recommend. And it's very shareable as well.
I started off with the pomegranate chili crispy cauliflower for $11. Red pepper Aleppo sauce. This is 100% plant-based. I think they were going for trying to make it taste kind of like maybe a sweet and sour chicken or a buffalo chicken, but the chunks of cauliflower were huge. They were big balls of cauliflower. So you definitely tasted the cauliflower. A lot of plant-based dishes try to make cauliflower taste like other things. This really wasn't one of them. I wasn't blown away by this dish. It was fine, but I'm not a huge fan of cooked cauliflower, so I like when they use cauliflower and season it so it tastes like something else, and they didn't really do that much here. If you like cauliflower, though, you'll probably like it. It was a fairly big portion for $11 in a Disney restaurant, so take that information however you want to use it. Courtney also got the fried calamari for $12, and I think this looked like it was a pretty good deal for $12.
Absolutely. It was a big portion, and as we know, seafood usually is priced a little bit higher. I thought it was prepared perfectly. The batter was very light. The texture of the calamari, which if you're not really familiar is squid, the texture was perfect. And the sauces that they put with it, there were two different sauces on this. One that was more of a bed with the calamari laying on top, and then the second sauce more drizzled on top. They also gave you a nice large slice of grilled lemon to sprinkle on top. That was wonderful. I love fresh lemon anyway. I love that it was grilled. All of the flavors were awesome. It definitely had a little bit of a spicy kick, but for people who don't like a lot of spice, I think this would be fine. And I absolutely loved this dish.
There's some Walt Disney World restaurants that have a specialty item. It's the grapefruit cake or the Cobb salad at Hollywood Brown Derby over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. The noodles at Ohana in Disney's Polynesian Resort, and that cheesecake thing at Satuli Canteen in Pandora at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Just items that if you can eat them, you need to try when you're at that particular restaurant. At Spice Road Table, that item is the house-made hummus fries. They are just $10. It comes with a citrus chipotle dipping sauce and preserved lemon. It is 100% plant-based. So this is good for the vegans, the vegetarians, but if you're a meat eater, trust me, don't skip this dish. You're still going to love it. The hummus fries initially started at a food and wine booth in Morocco, but it was so popular and this restaurant was struggling for a while, so they decided to move that over to the restaurant as an appetizer. It is worth it that if you're on My Disney Experience and you see that there is walk-up availability for Spice Road Table, and there is walk-up availability a lot, take it just to eat this item. When I say hummus fries, I think a lot of people think of French fries with hummus on top, but that's not it at all. They make these 5 pretty substantial sized bricks of fried hummus. You dip those bricks into the citrus chipotle sauce, and it's just banging. And like I said, it is $10. At the food and wine booth, you get 3 bricks of the hummus fries for like $8.50. So for another $1.50, you get 5 bricks. You get to sit down at a nice restaurant. We sat outside, so you're right there on the water. They don't have entrees at Spice Road Table. You just sort of mix and match these small plates and make your meal whatever you want. I love that because it gives you a chance to either just pick up something small, like just getting the hummus fries, or you can mix and match and have a big dinner while also trying a number of different things. It's very easy to skip all of the restaurants at Epcot because there's almost always a festival going on and you want to try the foods at the festival booths. But if you're looking to sit down at a restaurant, get a refillable drink, get off your feet for a few minutes, Spice Road Table often has availability. It's almost halfway through World Showcase. It's about the time where your feet might be hurting a little bit. Your kids are starting to whine. Maybe your wife is starting to whine a little bit. It's a good place to stop and get a good meal.
I definitely agree with you, Rick. I love this restaurant. It has nice theming, it has a nice atmosphere. Again, like you said, these small plates that you can have a smaller bite if you want, or mix and match. It gives you a chance to have something more substantial if you've been kind of snacking all day on festival foods. It has a nice location, and the service is great. I think that the people are very much proud to show you and share with you their food, and it is good food.
So that's Spice Road Table at the Morocco Pavilion in Epcot's World Showcase. Courtney, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thanks so much. Great talking to you as always.
This has been episode 65 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. I know this has been a lot of my voice on this episode. I'm glad we could bring Courtney in there for the last couple of minutes to give you a little bit of a break from my voice. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up over the next few weeks. Our regular guests, Sarah Says and Marissa from Chicago, already have some very interesting topics planned for you in the upcoming shows. Courtney and I are going to be heading to Disney's Hollywood Studios for Star Wars Day, May the 4th next week. We're hoping to have a lot of fun experience to share with you from that day. I'll also have all of the details for my new fundraising venture to go along with my pilgrimage on the Ireland Way starting in June. This is going to have a particular focus on domestic violence victims in the areas of Florida and other parts of the Southeast that can be affected by weather emergencies like hurricanes. There will be a brand new episode next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.